All right. Well, first of all, thank you guys so much for taking the time out of your day to be here. I'm super excited to present this student program to you. So it's called How Are You? And it's about mental health as it relates to student life. So I'm going to just show you how this is like broken down. We have three parts, and we're going to start with the overview and the content section of the meeting, and then we're going to go into student art and experiences. And then a little bit, we're going to have some interactive games, and there's going to be an open Q&A session. And the games have prizes, so you're going to want to participate. All right, we're going to start with our content. So I'm going to put a link into the chat right now, and it's going to be a little pre-survey. And you're only going to answer up to question number 5. So it's going to be a little survey. The link is going to be SurveyMonkey. You should see it in the chat right now. And that link is going to be for both the pre and the post survey. So you're going to answer up to question number 5 now. It's okay if you don't know the answers, just take your best guess. And then once you get to number 5, we're going to stop and we're going to keep going. And then whenever you're done, you can just give a quick thumbs up so we can know to move on. All right, we got a thumbs up. We got a few thumbs up. All right, I'll just give it one more minute. All right, so thank you for answering those questions. And that link will be active until the end of the presentation, so you can go back and review your answers if you'd like to. So I'm going to just do a little brief overview of who the JCK Foundation is. So the JCK Foundation was made in memory of John Cleaver Kelly, who unfortunately we lost to suicide a few years ago. And the foundation started in honor of him and to improve the state of youth mental health. So a great way that the JCK Foundation has been doing that is through their Legends programs and through their student programs. So I've been working as a part of their Legends program to bring mental health education to schools and communities. And here's just like a cool little infographic of all the great stuff they've been doing. As you can see, a ton of student programs, faculty programs, and parent programs. So they've been working really hard to implement those 3 pillars of the community together in order to make the community more well-informed when it comes to mental health. So I'll talk a little bit about me. Most of you know who I am already, but this is a bit of a background of why I got into mental health and why I'm so passionate about it now. As a kid, I was super shy. I was super introverted. I was always the kid who was sitting at the back of the class, never really raised my hand. And when the teacher would ask us to form groups for projects, I would just kind of sit off to the side. And in around my middle school years, I discovered art and I discovered music, particularly like alternative music. Anything that fell under that umbrella was something that I found that I got into at that time. And it really helped me to break out of my shell, to embrace like individuality, and it just gave me a lot of confidence. And with that newfound confidence and the help of Mrs. Smith, I co-founded the Warriors Club at North Salem High School. And because of all the mental health work I've done with that, I've realized that this really is what I want to do. And now I'm going to be studying psychology and also fine art as a minor on the side at St. Joseph's University in Philadelphia. So what even is mental health and why does it matter? Well, the reason that mental health is important is that it relates to your emotional, your psychological, and your social well-being. It really does touch every aspect of your life. It influences how you respond to stressors in your day-to-day life and how you handle the problems that life throws at you. And it really just impacts every aspect, whether it be your relationships, your schoolwork, and your job too. It influences your productivity and your attitude. And you're going to see later in the presentation a couple statistics here and there that I might be referencing. And these statistics I got myself from a student survey that I did a few months ago. And that survey was about 80 or so kids, and most of them were from North Salem. Some of them are also college kids. And I just basically asked them, what would you like to hear in a mental health presentation? Why, and if you think mental health is important, and things like that. So I'll be pointing out some of those figures later on in the presentation. So this is a great infographic from the CDC, and it's from June 2020. And it says during late June, 40% of US adults reported struggling with mental health or substance use. And when I saw that, I was just like blown away. I thought that's just such a crazy number. And then you look at these other statistics here too. Anxiety and depression symptoms affected almost 1 out of every 3 US adults. And to think that these are just people that reported that they felt this too. So the reason that I include this statistic is because it just proves how prevalent mental health and substance abuse disorders can be. So I'm going to pick one of these icebreaker questions, and then I'm going to invite anybody in the audience who would like to answer one. Maybe not my mom because our audio isn't going very well. But so I have a couple icebreaker questions, and they're just to get the conversation started a little bit. And personally, my favorite is number 3. Who do you turn to when you're feeling down, family and friends? And I would definitely answer that saying my friends. And the reason I'm saying that is because Megan's here and she's always been like my rock, the person that I always go to whenever something would go wrong or I need somebody to talk to. So that's my answer to number 3. And if anybody would like to answer any of the other questions, feel free.
Well, I'll just say right back at you because you're the same for me. So
thank you, Meg. But yeah.
I was gonna say too, for me, number 3, I would say my family and my friends whenever I'm feeling down. That's who I try to turn to and just kind of have those conversations to weather the storm, so to speak, and feel a little bit. It's interesting. Whenever I let something out, I always feel a little bit less. I feel like I judge myself harder than other people would judge me in a sense. It's that self stigma. It's really interesting, but that's who I usually turn to. And number 2 is an interesting question too. It's interesting. Good mental health. When my mental health is good, I feel like I'm on top of the world, and when it's bad, I feel like sometimes I can't even move. It's a really good question that makes you think too.
Yeah, no, for sure. I think that it's so important to have such a great support system. And speaking about your problems out loud is really just so beneficial because it really does help to put things in perspective. So the first disorder that I'm going to be talking about is anxiety, something that I have a very personal connection with. And I'm going to speak a little bit to how it manifests itself in students. And these are things that I saw in myself. These are things that I saw in my peers. And 2 of the big things that I think are overlooked a lot as symptoms of anxiety in students are perfectionistic tendencies and grade obsession, the first 2 bullet points. And by that, I'm referring to somebody who needs to have great grades all the time, who bases a lot of their self-worth and their self-importance and their sense of confidence on their grades. And unfortunately, I used to do that a lot. And I used to rationalize and justify it by saying, well, hey, I care a lot about my grades, and this is why I do this. But the truth of the matter is you really need to balance your own mental health and your own self with your schoolwork and your academics. And as you can see going down this list, short attention span, difficulty concentrating can also be caused by anxiety. Extreme nervousness before test taking. There is something that you might have heard of called test anxiety. A lot of kids suffer from it, where you get extremely nervous before a test. You might have you might feel nauseous, you might feel short of breath, might have a racing heart or sweaty palms, things like that. And a lot of people are going to feel nervous before a test, before a presentation. That's very common, but the line is blurred a little bit when you feel like you can't cope, or you feel like these symptoms are just becoming too much. And it's hard to look at one person and to say, this is normal or this is too much from an outside perspective. But if you're experiencing these symptoms and you think that they're too much, then they probably are anxiety symptoms. And another thing that I want to talk about is called seasonal affective disorder. And the reason that I bring this up is for two reasons. One, because not a lot of people know about it, and two, because it's also very prevalent. And as you can see, there's over 3 million US cases of seasonal affective disorder each year. And again, those are just people who have been diagnosed and people who have thought to mention this to their doctors or their therapists or their psychologists and things like that. And seasonal affective disorder is a type of depression that correlates with sunlight levels. So when sunlight levels are lower in fall and winter, there tends to be greater symptoms of depression, which I will get into in a later slide. And when sunlight levels are higher, like in spring and summer, these symptoms tend to lessen. So this results in especially difficult winters for students. And another reason that I bring this up as it relates to students is because winters are already tough enough for students, because you'll have things like SATs and you'll have things like midterms and exams. So this is something to definitely be on the lookout for when it comes to symptoms of depression and feeling worse as you go into the later months of the year. So this is a quote from Mrs. Smith, who I'm going to introduce later, but she is the 8th and 9th grade counselor at North Salem Middle School, and she'll talk to us a little bit later. But she also was the club advisor for the Warriors and just an amazing person. And something so important that she said time and time again is that students, friends, and peers are the front line. And by that she means we are the ones who are going to be recognizing these symptoms in other kids, and we're going to be the ones who are going to be able to reach out and get support for them if we need to. So what kind of signs are we noticing in these other kids? These are just a few examples, and the list goes on and on, but these are just some physical and some mental symptoms, and I'll highlight a few of them. In terms of physical, engaging in any type of risky behavior, that could be drug use, prescription drug abuse, using alcohol, speeding, driving recklessly, fighting, anything that shows that you don't have a lot of self-worth potentially, or you don't have much concern over what happens to your body. Poor hygiene too is something that gets overlooked a lot, or people don't really want to talk about when it comes to mental health. But sometimes people who are experiencing mental health issues will find it hard to do simple things like brushing your teeth or taking a shower. And a lot of people don't want to talk about this because it seems just gross, but the fact of the matter is that is a reality for a lot of people. And something else that I want to point out that I've had a lot of experience with is insomnia, and inability to fall asleep or to stay asleep. And something that is on the other end is fatigue and oversleeping too, which can also be physical symptoms. And there are also some mental symptoms that you'll recognize as well. Something that I've noticed in some of my friends who are struggling is that they're not enjoying the activities that they once enjoyed. This goes for a lot of people who are really enveloped in their hobbies, especially I've noticed a lot with athletes. Sometimes you'll see your friend isn't showing up to practice, isn't showing up to games, their heart doesn't really seem to be in it anymore, and it might be a warning sign that something is wrong. Something else that you want to be on the lookout for is feeling guilty, feeling like a burden, and of course, worrying messages saying things like, I want to die, I want this to stop. These are all some issues that you want to be on the lookout for in yourself and in other people. So the important thing to remember is that you have the power to save lives. So now that you know what to look for, I'm going to teach you a little bit about what to do when and if you recognize these signs in other people. So we're going to talk a little bit about some practical skills that we can work on. And this method is called Validate, Appreciate, Refer. And Validate, Appreciate, Refer is just basically a method that will teach you how to respond to somebody if they come to you saying that they've had a tough time recently, or if you'd like to reach out to somebody saying, hey, I've noticed these signs in you, and I just want to make sure everything's okay. So I'm just going to play this quick video for you, and it'll give you an overview of Validate, Appreciate, Refer.
Hey, has this ever happened to you? Maybe a friend, teammate, coworker, loved one says something like, I've been having a hard time lately. I've been feeling really anxious. I'm overwhelmed. If it sounds like more than a bad day, it probably is. So, what could you do? Consider this an opening to start a conversation with your friend. Talk and listen using VAR. Validate, appreciate, refer. VAR. An easy way to let someone know it's okay to not be okay, and you are not alone. Here's how it works. V. Validate their feelings. Let them know what they're feeling is okay, and that you believe them. Validate sounds like, I'm really sorry you're struggling right now. I believe you. I hear you. That must be really hard to deal with. Even though you might not totally relate, your friend's feelings are always valid. A. Appreciate their courage. Speaking up can be hard. It's not easy to admit you're struggling. Appreciate sounds like, thank you so much for telling me. That took a lot of courage. I don't know what to say. I'm just so glad you told me. I love you and I'm here for you if you want to talk or need anything. Show that you're there to support them. Let them know you care and they're not alone. R. Refer them to skills and support. Sometimes, what a person needs is someone to listen, though sometimes they need more. Refer sounds like, want to take a break from studying and go watch a movie? I've been using this meditation app. It's really helped me slow down my thoughts. Can we make plans to go on a run together tomorrow? I think it might be helpful to talk to someone. Can I go with you? Show that help is available and that you're with them.
So that is just a great video about Validate, Appreciate, Refer. And this next slide here just summarizes it a little bit. So remember these three words, validate, appreciate, and refer, if you want to talk to somebody about possibly them going through a tough time. So the first thing you want to do is to validate their feelings. And there's a couple examples there. What you're feeling is okay. I believe you. I hear you. And then you want to move on to appreciate. You want to say, thank you for reaching out to me. Thank you for telling me I'm here for you. Because of reaching out can be really hard, and it's important to acknowledge that. And the third thing that you do is you refer. So this might be starting the conversation at another location. This might be starting a conversation with somebody else. Referring them may be offering them skills that are outside of your skill set and referring them to people who may be able to handle the situation better than you can. And there really is no shame in referring somebody to somebody else who has these skills that aren't in your skill set, because at the end of the day, the mental health professionals are professionals for a reason, and it's a good thing that you have them to rely on. So just a couple quick reminders. Whenever we talk about validate, appreciate, refer, it's not always that easy because not everybody wants to talk about their issues. I've definitely experienced this in a lot of my friends. There's sometimes a stigma about mental health that causes them to not want to talk about their issues. And something else to remember is that your friend's problems are never 100% your responsibility. And if you try to assume the problems of somebody else, that can lead to mental health issues on your own. And I remember there's just a period in my life where I knew a lot of my friends were going through tough times, and I was actually degrading my own mental health by trying to be too much involved in their lives and too much involved in their problems and trying to help them. So it's difficult. It's a difficult balance to be between, but if you practice, you can reach that balance. And of course, another really important thing to remember is that trained professionals are always available to help you. And this is just a cool infographic about conversation starters about mental health. If you did want to start this conversation in a really casual way, how would you do it? Well, these are some examples. I really like, how are you really? That really kind of just prompts somebody to answer really honestly and not allow them to kind of dodge the question or be a little dismissive. I've noticed that is also a really great starter. There's an example there that says, I've noticed you've been showing up for work a lot lately. Or the example that I used before is if you have a friend who's a student athlete and you say, hey, I noticed you haven't been showing up to practice. I noticed you haven't been showing up to the games. What's wrong? Is there anything wrong? Can I help you? And these are just some great ways to start some conversations. And it's definitely worth mentioning that if you believe someone is in immediate danger that is out of your control, out of the control of parents or nearby adults, call 911, or you can call the suicide hotline. And I actually invite you to, if you have your phone next to you, put the suicide hotline into your contacts. Their number you can see on the screen is 1-800-273-TALK or 1-800-273-8255. And I always recommend doing this so that you can share the contact information with somebody else if you need to, or to call it on behalf of somebody else, or for yourself if you feel you're ever in that situation. And by having it in your phone, you just have quick access to it. And another great resource to have is the 741-741 texting hotline. If you text hello to that, they will connect you with a therapist and somebody to talk to online, a professional. So that's a little less immediate, but it's also a great resource. Another thing that I wanted to talk about that I think is really, really relevant to students is student burnout. And this is a quote from the survey that I did before this presentation. A North Salem student said, simply from short personal experience, schools should put less pressure on fixing grades and more on fixing the reason why they're dropping. And I just thought that was a really powerful quote. And I think that it ties in with student burnout so well, because I think that once you have a lot of pressure on students, as you can see here, some of the sources of pressure being academics, athletics, maybe work, maybe somebody has a job, family life, personal life, social life. All of these things can be very overwhelming for a student. And it's also important to note that high school students are young and they haven't had much experience juggling all of these different aspects of their lives. So all of these together can really lead to student burnout. And I felt this especially during my junior year between studying for SATs, studying for APs, applying to colleges. That was just a very, very stressful process, and I felt a lot of burnout. And there are a ton of physical and mental manifestations of burnout. You're going to get fatigued. That's pretty much the number one symptom. You're probably going to lose interest in hobbies and activities. I know I felt when I came home from school for many days of junior year that I was just so exhausted that I didn't want to do a lot of the things that I had enjoyed before, such as making art or playing video games. I was just done. And student burnout can also look like just tons of fatigue, like I mentioned before, and an inability to do your schoolwork, focus on your schoolwork, and also outside of school, your job performance might suffer a little bit, your relationships and your social life could also suffer. So 2/3 of the students that I interviewed in that survey said that they believed that time and stress management were key to having a good mental health. So this next part of the presentation is going to be just some tips and tricks for managing your time and for managing stress. So I think that something that's super applicable to students is managing your time through study methods. And one method that I always like to mention is called the Pomodoro method. And Pomodoro is actually Italian for tomato. As you can see in the top right, there's a little tomato clock. And the reason that that's there is because this is a time-sensitive method. And the idea is 20 on, 5 off. So you do 20 minutes of work, whether that be 20 minutes reading your textbook, 20 minutes doing your homework, and then you take a break for 5 minutes. And then you repeat. So you do 20 minutes of work, 5 minutes of rest, 20 minutes of work, 5 minutes of rest. And I think that that method is especially helpful for people who have difficulty concentrating and people who don't like to work in large chunks of time. And personally, I am not like that. I actually like to work in big chunks. So that's why manually creating due dates is one of my preferred study methods. And what I mean by that is once you enter high school, you are going to see a lot more often that you are going to get big assignments with one due date. Like, so for example, you might have an essay that's due Friday night. And the way that I would manually create due dates for that essay is, say I'm assigned it on Monday. On Monday, I will write the introduction. On Tuesday, I would write the first body paragraph. On Wednesday, I would write the second body paragraph, etc. So I would set little goals for myself and break them up by days or by time limit, things like that. And another super helpful method for some people is to work in a study group with friends. So I know that some friends I would work great with, and some friends, all I would do is chat with them. So this can be a little bit of a risky method, but I think for working with students who you know you'll work well with, there's a ton of accountability that you hold each other for, and it just is a lot more fun than studying by yourself. And another thing that's worth mentioning is using homework tracking apps. I did that for a few years of high school. I used the homework app. There's also one called Agenda, and they're both free. And they will send you notifications when you have due dates due, and you can also sort your due dates and your assignments by class. You can also color code them on the app. It's just really cool, and they're very user-friendly too. So now we're going to talk about a few stress management techniques, and the first one is called box breathing. So I'm going to show you a quick little video that shows you what box breathing is and how to do it. And I invite you to do it along with the video too if you feel comfortable.
Can help reduce stress and improve mood. It can also help with controlling and managing emotions. It's very easy to learn. Imagine breathing around a box. Inhale as you visualize going up one side of the box, gradually filling your lungs with air. When you reach the top, hold your breath for 1 to 5 seconds as you picture going across the top of the box. Exhale gradually as you imagine traveling down the other side of the box. Pause again for 1 to 5 seconds as you go along the bottom of the box. Then repeat. This can be done 7 to 10 times in a row, focusing on the breath. If you can do it sitting down with your feet grounded, that will help too. But really, it can be done.
So the great thing about box breathing is that it's going to get a ton of oxygen to your brain. It's going to help you feel more relaxed. And I used this technique a lot when I was in school before a test and I was nervous. And something that's super helpful with this technique in particular is that I noticed in the classroom there were always a ton of like box shapes around me. Like I would always look at my desk or I would look at my computer screen, and I would be able to practice the technique on something that's in front of me too.
Can help reduce stress and improve.
So this part is also super fun. This is another stress management technique, and it's a breathing technique. And it's called the chicken dance. And I was actually shown this when I was in a meeting, another mental health meeting that was from the Warriors. We had a guest speaker who showed us how to do this. And I'm going to demonstrate it for you, and then I'm going to ask you to participate if you feel so inclined. So the chicken dance is you start with your arms at your side, your elbows against your side, and then you inhale slowly as you bring your arms up, and then exhale as you bring your arms back down. So slowly inhale as you bring your arms up, and exhale as you bring them back down. And you can repeat that a bunch of times. I love doing that because it always makes me laugh. It's funny. And it's a great way to practice the timing and the rhythm of the inhale and the exhale. It's also just super memorable. So the next time that you're feeling a little bit nervous, definitely try either the box breathing or the chicken dance. And one of the great things about these techniques also is that you don't even have to wait until you're nervous or you're experiencing a panic attack to benefit from using these. If you just want to ground yourself or you want to get present in the moment, they're great techniques to use. So another stress management technique that I use often is a grounding technique. So this one is called the 5 senses. And when you really want to be present in the moment, like I mentioned before, this is what you can do. You can look around to yourself and you can say either out loud or in your head, name 5 things that you can see, name 4 things that you can feel, 3 things that you can hear, 2 things that you can smell, and 1 thing that you can taste. So I've used this a lot and it's been easy for me to remember. But if you look up 5 senses grounding technique, you can also find the list of what you need to look for if you want to ground yourself. It's so helpful. It helps you to really be present in the moment and take in your surroundings. And on the left are some other examples of grounding exercises. Deep breathing, like I mentioned before, those are just some examples of how to practice deep breathing. Holding a piece of ice, taking a walk, anything that can engage your senses is going to be great for grounding. So we're going to be moving into the second part of the presentation right now, which is student art and student experiences. So this is a painting that was done by my friend Adeline, who used to go to North Salem. And I had reached out to some of my friends on social media when I was creating this presentation, and I said to them, is there any artwork that you've made that relates to mental health or you think would be useful, beneficial in a mental health presentation? And she reached out to me like immediately and she said, yes, I made a piece about mental health for my school. So I'm just going to read you the little blurb that she sent to me along with this piece. She said, I had portraits as my AP art concentration this year, and it caused me a lot of stress on top of everything else that's going on in my life. I joked that this represented my brain on a canvas, but to me, it speaks so much more, and I think it really shows how I feel and how I felt all year. And not only am I super proud of my friend, I think that this is an amazing piece of art, but I also mention this because I think that art is a really great tool to use to release your stress. And not only can you paint and draw, but there are also tons of other artistic outlets like writing poetry, journaling, writing music, playing an instrument. And I think that sometimes these can be overlooked in their effectiveness to treat symptoms of mental health disorders. And I know that personally, I have been an artist for a very long time, and I think that it's been incredibly helpful. So I always make sure to mention it in my presentations. So I'm going to mention a few events that we've done with the Warriors in North Salem in hopes that you will be inspired to also bring these events, similar events or similar missions into your own community. So the first thing that we talk about when we talk about the Warriors is the semicolon that's in the name. And sometimes people have come up to me and be like, well, why is that there? Is that just a typo? It's not a typo. It's actually metaphorical because the semicolon is used when an author could choose to end a sentence but instead chooses to continue it. And you can think of yourself as an author and the sentence as your life. And it just basically represents a moment in time where somebody could choose to end their life, but they continue to keep going instead. And it's just a great message of hope. So we like to open up each year with a little bit of a little educational session about what the semicolon means, and it gets people talking about the Warriors and about mental health in general. Something else great that we do is something called P.S. I Love You Day. I have to give credit to my friend Gabby Pelosi, who organized this thing at my school. She's just incredible. And P.S. I Love You Day is just an event that happens around Valentine's Day of each year. And the theme of the event is purple. So we put up a bunch of purple hearts and purple streamers around the school that all say really inspirational messages, because the idea of the day is uplifting those who feel sad or feel lonely around Valentine's Day. So that's a great way to get a lot of artists involved in the event too, because we're always doing paintings on the walls, paintings on their windows and things like that. And another thing that we've done is the Empathy Walk and the Empathy Museum, where we invited people to share anonymous stories about their own experiences with mental health, good and bad, and we invited people to walk in their shoes, so to speak, and to look at their situations with empathy. And one of our biggest events that we do is our annual mental health fair, which is during May, Mental Health Awareness Month. Our first one was incredible. We got a ton of organizations. I want to say like 20, but the number might be even higher. We had local organizations. We had some state organizations like NAMI, the National Alliance of Mental Illness for New York, was there. We had everybody from a local granola company to statewide mental health professionals, and it was just incredible. And not only was it a great way to get people to talk about mental health, but it was also a great way for people to network. For those who are interested in the field of psychology, social work, anything under that umbrella, it was a great way to meet people and to talk a little bit about the profession. And something that is always worth mentioning is that the Warriors is almost entirely student-led, and a lot of their events are student-led, and I believe that that's why they are so successful in the school, because students love listening to their peers. And it all goes back to what Mrs. Smith said, students are the front line. Students will listen to other students before they listen to adults. It's just the way of the world, but we can use it to our advantage by creating a bunch of student-led events. And one of those student-led events that we've done with the Warriors is called Your Words Matter. And we look at this from the lens of mental health, and we look at it from the lens of bullying as well. So something that we talk about is misusing mental health terms such as psycho, that I've heard a lot, bipolar, and so OCD. I'm sure everybody in their lives has heard somebody say, oh, sorry, I'm OCD, after arranging their pens by color order or something like that. Psycho and bipolar also have pretty negative connotations. And the reason that we do these presentations is not to shame anybody or to make anybody feel bad for something that they might have done in the past, but rather to educate and to steer the conversation toward a more positive direction. We also use it because we do these presentations to middle schoolers and those who are pretty young as an opportunity to talk about mental health and explain mental health. We also talk about hate speech, about bullying, because it tends to be so prevalent in middle school. We talk about the mental health implications of bullying, both on the bullier and whoever is being bullied. But each school has its own policy when it comes to misusing terms and for hate speech. And if I were to be giving this presentation to a certain school, I would be definitely pulling that up, having a professional talk about that too. And something to mention is that these policies do extend to social media. So a lot of kids, more and more recently, turn to social media and try to hide behind being anonymous online. But at the end of the day, you're never really anonymous, and anything that you send, you have accountability for. So that leads us into our last point, which is you're not always going to say the right thing. Nobody's perfect, and of course we all understand that. You're not always going to be right, but you're always going to be accountable for what you say, for what you do, for what you send or post online. These are just some images of artwork that our middle schoolers have made. On the left, you can see sticky notes that say empathy and what is empathy. We led a little informational meeting for the middle schoolers about what empathy is. And of course, we relate that to mental health. And on the right is some artwork that middle schoolers made that is currently hung up in North Salem. And they're just artwork that they made based on the research that they did for a bunch of different mental health disorders, as you can see, obsessive compulsive disorder, bipolar disorder, depression, and things like that. So again, these are great ways to engage students using art, and the incentive that their artwork is going to be shown for everybody around the school. It's just great. I loved seeing it coming down the hallway because it just told me that the kids were so engaged with what they were learning, and it's adorable to see the art of middle schoolers when you walk down the hallway. But I just loved these presentations, and I think that if you're able to, working with younger kids to talk about mental health and incorporating some artistic elements is just incredibly helpful. So this picture of me is from a few years ago. Got paint on my leg, got my painting clothes. I was totally into it. But we collaborated with the art club at our school to create a mural in our middle school that says some kids will be cooler, smarter, more athletic than you, but it just doesn't matter. Be the kid who is kind, empathetic, and respectful. And the reason that I include this is not only because, of course, it promotes our mission as the Warriors, but it's just another great example of a way that art has been used to promote the mental health message and to get a bunch of kids involved with such a great mission. So I'm going to talk a little bit about making help more accessible, because you might be watching this presentation and thinking, okay, all this information is great, but I don't really feel comfortable starting a conversation. And the truth is, not a lot of people are, and that's okay, because I'm going to help you get there. So something that you can do is speak candidly with teachers and faculty, especially if you are a student who is going through a tough time. If you go to your math teacher and you say, hey, you know what? I've honestly been having a really tough time lately. I've been feeling overwhelmed. As long as you speak honestly and candidly, you will probably be understood by your teacher, and they may give you a longer due date or something like that, whatever you might need. But have these conversations with your teacher, faculty, and initiate these conversations among your friend group too, because you might realize that somebody is struggling and they've been really hiding it for a while, but you're going to be able to now provide them some extra support. And a great way, of course, to make help more accessible and to break down that stigma behind mental health is through clubs, events, and activities, like I mentioned before. And a great way to encourage people to participate in these clubs and activities is to offer community service. That has been the #1 thing for the Warriors. And it's completely honest too, because if you are learning about mental health, whether you're teaching it to other people or you are just learning for the sake of learning, you are definitely doing your community a service by learning this information. And I'm going to include my contact information at the end if anybody wants to reach out to me about the Warriors curriculum. We've actually been making a curriculum for a long time that includes tips on how to get people involved, where to start with making a mental health club. And even if you're interested in just starting a similar club that might be like psychology or mental health that isn't exactly the Warriors, there's a ton of great activities in there and ideas. So the final part of my presentation is interactive. So grab your phones again if you have them with you, and this is super fun. I'm going to introduce Mrs. Smith now. As I talked to you before, she is our middle school high school counselor at North Salem. She was the club advisor for the Warriors. She is just amazing, and she's been so helpful. So I'm going to invite her to talk a little bit about why she got involved in mental health work and working with kids. And as she's talking, think to yourself, if I or somebody I knew were in a mental health crisis, who in the school would I reach out to? So, Mrs. Smith, I'll give you the floor to talk a little bit about yourself and your history if you would like to.
Sure. Okay, first I want to say, John, your foundation is amazing, the JKC Foundation and all the work you're doing. So impressive, like so amazing. You're changing lives, one presentation at a time. And then Alex, I have to say, I am blown away. You did a fantastic job. You are just such a natural, and you're going to impact lives as well. That college is so lucky to get you. So before I worked at North Salem, I was a counselor at another school district in Westchester, Lakeland School District. And I had a student who was struggling with mental health issues, and she had been hospitalized. And when she came back, one of her teachers asked her if she had a nice vacation. So it was very disheartening and very upsetting. And she came to my office and she was just so upset. But instead of taking that, and not really doing anything with it, she said, we have to do something. So we came up with the idea of starting a club. Now, remember, about 8 years ago, mental health was even more taboo than it is now. And schools were very hesitant and worried about discussing it. But we kept advocating, and that's something that I teach all my students to do, how important it is to advocate, to speak up for yourself, to speak up for someone else who is voiceless and too scared to. And, the Warriors came to life. I love, love, love my job. That's something else, I left Lakeland to come here because I'm able to work with 8th and 9th graders and do more programming and mental health work, which is just amazing. And Alex knows I really mean this. You guys are the front line. You are. And it just, 8 years ago when there was talk about not allowing us to do the club, just blew my mind, because teens hear from their teens first, whether it's on social media or in person. And if we don't equip all of you to know what to say, to know what to do, and to even be able to say to a friend, I don't know what to do. I don't know how to help you, but here, let me give you this resource. That's empowering. That's helping you advocate for yourself. Alex, the point you stress, and I just want to say it again because it's so important, that no friend is expected to carry the weight of another friend's mental health situation. But I think if we all become more active listeners, oftentimes that's just what someone needs. I tell the students that parents want to fix things. Parents aren't really good listeners, and I'm a parent myself, so I had to be very cognizant of that. We want to make our kids better. But most people who are struggling just need that unconditional ear, someone to be there for them, someone to bounce stuff off of, someone to validate them, someone to say, hey, I've noticed, this, I've noticed that, and to not be judged. So, I think I have that compassionate ear for students. My room is open door and it's always very busy, which I'm happy about. So for anyone out there who is hurting, find that trusted adult, find that friend, find somebody. You don't have to go through this alone. COVID has made the mental health crisis for teenagers even worse than what we were facing, 1 in 5. I would imagine the numbers are even higher. So, everything that Alex said is so powerful, and I hope it does resonate with some of you. And, get involved with JKC Foundation, get involved with NAMI, start a Warriors Club, whatever it may be. There's so much out there, and we're all here to help and support you.
Thank you so much, Mrs. Smith. I couldn't have said it better myself. And let me ask you a quick question too, just because we are talking about students and student mental health. What do you think is the #1 barrier between students in crisis and reaching out to their guidance counselors or reaching out to somebody in their school?
I think it's the stigma. I really think stigma is so powerful, and students are afraid that someone's going to find out, someone's going to judge them. I also hear from students often that, some families don't understand and they think they're being, like a drama queen. I hear that a lot from young ladies, like, you're a drama queen, get over it. Life is tough, or parents will start to lecture about their own. Well, I was through this and I came out okay, but times are very different. And I think that's a big barrier, is that stigma really prevents kids from coming forward. So Alex, as you mentioned, get the posters up, make it visual, put mental health throughout the building everywhere, have some sort of kickoff event. The more that we treat mental health like asthma and diabetes, the more lives that are going to be helped.
That's so true. Definitely breaking down the stigma is the big thing. And a great way to do that is through, like we said before, all those clubs and activities, speaking to those higher ups in your district and making sure that you're able to get events up and running that are going to raise awareness. So thank you so much, Mrs. Smith. So I'm going to open the floor to any questions. I know a lot of people here are pretty experienced with mental health, but if you have a question for myself, Mrs. Smith, John, anybody, feel free to ask. And I also have a couple questions after anybody would like to speak.
was going to ask a question in follow up to what you were both saying about the biggest barriers, especially being from a student and being also a mental health professional. You know, I guess kind of seeing from 8 years ago to now, and this could be for Mrs. Smith or for Alex. What are some of the biggest, I guess, improvements that you've seen, and what are some ways that we can continue to help students and even parents get comfortable with the concept that their child may be struggling, and kind of connecting the parents to the guidance counselors, to the school psychologists, to the students. I'm just trying to think of any success stories or just ways that we can continue to do that you could share with us.
I think that through the Warriors, a great way that we've done that is through having these big events that we've invited parents and faculty members to. I remember at the beginning of the year, we did a couple faculty meetings where we as the Warriors, as the students, spoke directly to the faculty members. And there have also been times where we've had events that are outside of the school, like speaking to BOCES, where we would invite parents to come and also watch those presentations. So then we have that three-way conversation between the parents and the professionals, the school board, and the students.
And I think starting younger, John, at the district I used to work at, they had a separate building for their middle school. At North Salem, we're all attached. So they had a Junior Warriors Club. And this year, I hope to get into our elementary school and just bringing some of the older students over just to read some books, maybe about ADHD or depression. We have to give the students the vocabulary to identify. We do a lot of work with Ruler and Mark Brackett, and our BOCES, Putnam Northern Westchester BOCES, has been really significant in pushing trainings for counselors and social workers and administrators. So although we have come really far, I think we still have a lot of work to do. And there's organizations like you who are just that voice that's out there that is so powerful. And, Alex's voice, to see her speak and promote this message, but we do have to start younger.
And I was going to say, like, for me, just kind of seeing this and going to different schools, being able to have someone like Alex who's so open and is so passionate, and I think you really do an incredible job, Alex. And I'm sure your classmates will say the same thing. You make this approachable. Same with you, Mrs. Smith. You make it approachable. It's not this daunting, scary, thing to say, let me open up about my depression, but rather, hey, we have a Warriors Club. Hey, there's someone like Mrs. Smith that's here. Oh, there's someone like Alex that's here. And I think that goes such a long way. And I've seen that, as a 31-year-old, just with my own friends. I think that's been something that I've seen is when people make it a little bit less intimidating and more approachable. And I just think this kind of, it sometimes you're helping people without even realizing you're helping them, by just kind of shining your light, so to speak.
100%. I totally agree. And it's amazing. Something that I've witnessed personally is this chain effect of once somebody opens up, then somebody else opens up, and it prompts another person to open up. And it's just incredible. I think that we fostered such a great environment with the Warriors, and even in the school as a whole too, to just being open and talking about these issues. So thank you so much for those questions, and thank you, Mrs. Smith, for weighing in.
Just wonderful. You really never know who's listening to you. You never know. You might have said something that someone that might not even opened up that you've helped them yet. They might be sitting there saying, wow, I'm so glad that I saw that presentation. I'm so glad that we have this club on campus. It makes me feel a little bit better getting help myself. So I think it's that chain effect, and it's also kind of that silentness of, even though you might not hear from certain people, you are actually helping them. I've seen that a couple of times in my own life. It's a very powerful feeling.
And there's definitely been a couple people who I've known since my sophomore year, the start of the Warriors Club, to my senior year when I was graduating, who only came up and really spoke to me at the end of my senior year, just saying thank you, saying that they really appreciated the club. And it might have taken them a couple years to work up the courage, but I think that we've been able to help them through all this time, and it's an amazing feeling.
I have a question for you, Alex. As you're transitioning to college, what are some resources that you plan to take with you in college that's helped with your mental health, or how do you plan to take over the world in college with all of these great ideas? You changed your high school environment. I'm curious to know if you have any plans for college.
Yeah, I definitely do. So I haven't done a ton of research yet, but I'm definitely planning to get involved with a mental health club on the campus. I'm assuming that there is one. If there isn't one, I will start one. I'll definitely be a part of the psych clubs because I'm going to be majoring in psychology, so I'm going to be taking advantage of those resources, getting to know my professors and things like that. And more personally, I know that with my senior year experience and beyond, I'm going to be taking more time for myself and all my self-care to practice my hobbies and things like that. I'm definitely going to continue art in college because, as I mentioned before, that was something that helped me really personally. So I think that just getting involved on the campus and as I transition and get myself adjusted and I'm meeting new friends and stuff, inviting as many people as I can to participate in those activities too, because I just think that that's not only like the most effective way to get involved, but also the most fun way too.
Awesome. I love that mentality. Like if it's not there, I'm going to create it and it's going to be there. That's awesome. Thank you for sharing.
Yeah,
That's
thank you.
one great resource for anyone that is transitioning that might be listening to college. The JED Foundation. Google that. It's a fantastic resource for young adults who are going into college. We had a speaker come and speak to the Warriors, but their website is loaded with resources. So anyone headed to college, definitely look up the JED Foundation.
Yeah, for sure. Look them up. I think that they're based in New York too, which is great. The JED Foundation, JED. Make sure you look it up. So now we have the most fun part of the presentation. I created a Kahoot. So for those who don't know, Kahoot is just basically online trivia, and you get points for answering the questions correctly, and you also get points for answering them quickly. So if you have your phone with you, feel free to go to www.kahoot.it, or if you have the app, you can open that too, and put in the game pin. You'll see it right there, 9915321. And I just have a couple questions about content that you learned from the presentation and mental health in general. So I'm going to switch over now to another tab, which is here. We got the funny randomized names here. And I'll just give a couple more minutes for people to join. I'll switch back to this if you need to see. Kahoot.it, the number is 9915321. You can also see it at the top. All right, we got a bunch of people in here now. So you're going to see a question that's prompted. Just choose the correct answer. Choosing it quickly gives you more points, and choosing it correctly gives you the more points. So there's 12 questions, and let's start. True or false? Box breathing and the chicken dance methods are only beneficial if you are experiencing a panic attack. Correct. That is false. They can be used at any time to reduce any symptoms of anxiety. All right, question number 2. Double points. This one's a bit harder. Which of the following is not a good mental health conversation starter? Good job. So a lot of people, this is a common misconception. A lot of people's first instinct to somebody opening up to them about not feeling good is, oh, cheer up, it's okay. Everyone feels that way. Don't worry, you're not alone. And while the sentiment of you not being alone can be really helpful, telling somebody to cheer up and that everybody feels that way sometimes can be minimizing and can be hurtful sometimes too. Even if you don't intend for it to come off that way, sometimes that's what happens. So that's why you'd like to stick to some of these other answers. Lately, I've noticed that. And then some symptoms. Would you like to go for a walk so that you can get the conversation going? and how are you really are all better answers. All right, why are students especially likely to experience burnout? Yep, that's the correct answer, all of the above. Students are at a challenging point in their lives where they might be considering the years ahead, where they're trying to balance family life, social life, emotional health, like I mentioned before. And students also experience a lot of pressure from outside sources, such as academic pressure and athletic pressure. So all of these combined can contribute to student burnout. All right, which is not a part of the 3-word method we use to show support for somebody in need? Correct, compliment. So validate, appreciate, refer is that 3-step method that we like to use to talk to somebody who you think might be going through a crisis. You want to validate them, tell them that you know that their feelings are real and that you appreciate them. You appreciate them by saying things like, thank you for telling me. I know that it can be hard, but I appreciate you reaching out. And then you refer them to somebody who, to either a method that they can use to cope with their feelings, such as, oh, hey, I've been using the Headspace app for meditation lately and it's been helping me. Or you can refer them to an individual or an organization that could help them. All right. What is the name of the foundation that has helped to create this presentation? Correct, the JCK Foundation. Great people. Thank you again for all of your help. All right, true or false? Immediate and dangerous mental health crises should be handled by mental health professionals. Correct. If you believe that somebody is in an immediate crisis or immediate danger, don't try to assume this problem or solve it yourself, because you just don't have the skills equipped to do so. Just pass on the problem to somebody else who is more well equipped. All right, next question. Which is an example of a healthy grounding technique? Correct. Box breathing is the method that we talked about, where you inhale as you go up and exhale as you go along the sides, and then you repeat that breathing technique. All of these other answers are issues that you may use a grounding technique to help you to get out of, especially things like worrying about the past or the future before you go into a presentation, or maybe if you're sitting here like I am thinking about, oh my gosh, what's college going to be like? You can use a bunch of grounding techniques to help you with that. All right. What is seasonal affective disorder? Yes, correct. Good job. Seasonal affective disorder is a type of depression that is caused by low sunlight levels. And sometimes the name can be misleading. It's not a worry about the change of seasons per se, but it's an actual physiological reaction to having lower sunlight levels. All right. What are some ways you can get involved in mental health work at your school? Yep, you can do all of the above things. Practicing empathy is a great place to start. The validate, appreciate, refer method is what we talked about before. Also great if you want to reach out to somebody or somebody's reached out to you. Starting a new club about psychology or mental health is also a great way to do it. That's what I did. Creating community-wide or school-wide events such as fundraisers and fairs. Great ways to get people involved and to get the word of mental health out there. All right, coming up on the end. Question 10. According to the CDC, what % of US adults reported struggling with mental health or substance use during June of 2020? See if you can remember this statistic. Yep, 40%, 2 out of 5 people. That's an insanely high number. And if you can remember too, there's almost a 33% chance, a little bit less, about 31% chance, that somebody who answered that survey also had experienced symptoms of depression and anxiety. So those were just people too who answered the survey, of course, and people who were able to recognize these symptoms in themselves. So the actual number can be higher. All right, 11 out of 12, double points. Which of the following should you do first if your friend talks to you about going through a tough time recently? Which should you do first? Yes, that's true. Validating is the first step of the validate, appreciate, refer method that we learned about. So validating emotions, letting somebody know you're there to support them, reminding them that things can get better, and assuring them that everybody has bad days are also similar answers to what I mentioned before, where you can unintentionally minimize somebody's struggles that they're going through. And referring them to a parent or professional is always helpful, but we like to keep it as the last step so it doesn't seem like you are dismissing their problems and handing them off right away. So remember, the order goes validate, appreciate, refer. All right, last question. Which of the following is not true about mental health? Yep, good job. Mental health doesn't only affect your own life, it affects how you relate to the world around you. So, of course, how you respond to stress, issues, problems that you might be experiencing, your performance at school, work, personal projects, and of course, your relationships, whether they're your friends and family, intimate relationships, you and your friends, and your social life as well. All right, let's see who's the winner. Good job, Aquatic Hen. If Aquatic Hen is not one of the JCK Foundation members, reach out to me after the presentation because you've won yourself a prize. So thank you guys so much for participating in the Kahoot, and I hope that that was like a little fun way to be reminded of some of the things that we learned in the presentation. So we're just going to wrap things up now. The last thing that I really want to emphasize is it would be super helpful if you talk about this presentation. So share the work that the JCK Foundation has been doing. Tell your school, tell your business, tell your community about the student programs that they run and the programs that they have for faculty members and parents as well, because they're so helpful and they're so impactful. If you were a student watching this with your school, I would encourage you to talk to your teachers and your faculty members about this presentation, whether they thought anything I said was on point, maybe I missed a mark with something. It's just great to initiate these conversations like I mentioned before. And definitely, I hope that this inspired you a little bit to start a club or even just a few activities within your community. And my contact information is there too, my email and my Instagram if you want to reach out on social media to obtain some of the information of the Warriors program. So again, that just has great information about student events and student clubs, but it's not restricted to student events and student clubs. There's just great information there about getting people involved and rallied behind a mission too. So before I let you go, we're just going to do the post survey. So if you go back to the chat, the SurveyMonkey link that was there at the beginning, I'll send it again. That is going to be the same link that you're going to return to. And you are going to start at question 5 now. If it asks you for a password to continue to the post survey, put in the password JCK, all uppercase, and then just fill out those last questions for me when you get the chance.
Alex, this was incredible.
Thank you.
I love the Kahoots there. That was so much fun. The actual like, answering the questions there. That's something that I've never done that before. That was so much fun.
Yeah. Oh, I love doing Kahoot. We would always do those sometimes studying in class and things before tests.